can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, and I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord, can you feel it coming in the air tonight? Oh Lord, oh Lord.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and today I am bringing you a brand new subject in the Bad Boy series, and that is the rise and fall of NFL tight end Aaron Hernandez. Now, this is the second bad boy we have covered with this series, the first being former UFC fighter War Machine, and ever since I dropped that series, many of you have been asking for more. So here is one you are not gonna believe. Let's get into it. Now, Aaron Hernandez was born in Bristol, Connecticut in 1989. His dad's side of the family, they were Puerto Rican, and his mother's side of the family was of Italian descent, which made for an interesting and sometimes explosive dynamic. His dad was kind of a local legend in the Bristol, Connecticut area. In the 70s, he was actually a big-time football star in the area, and after high school, he went to play for UConn, the University of Connecticut. So he was very well known and respected in the area, so much so that his nickname was the King, and he just looked intimidating. He stood only about 5'10", but even in his 40s, this dude was muscular. He was kind of built like a brick shithouse, if you will. Now, Aaron's parents were married about 3 years when Aaron was born, following just a few years behind his older brother, DJ. Now, as you may expect, athletics, a big deal in the Hernandez household. And Aaron's dad expected perfection. Although his dad, Dennis, had a spotless reputation publicly, privately, it was a totally different story. His dad would get physically violent, especially when he drank, with both Aaron and DJ and even Aaron's mother. He would hit the kids for underperforming in athletics or academics. And to put it how it was, his mom and dad just did not get along. There were verbal fights almost on a daily basis. And Aaron's brother DJ wrote a book several years ago talking about that, talking about how horrible the abuse was in that house. It would get so bad that in 1991, when Aaron was just 2 years old, his parents divorced. Then in 1996, when Aaron was 7 years old, they got married again. And as both Aaron and his brother DJ got older, it was obvious they were both gifted on a football field. DJ would graduate high school. He would go on to follow in his dad's footsteps and accept a scholarship to UConn. And Aaron, at just 14 years old and a freshman in high school, was also offered a scholarship at UConn. At 14, which he committed to the college that day, the day that they offered him. And life seemed to be great for Aaron outside of that physical abuse until it wasn't. Now, when Aaron was 16, his life would change drastically when his dad went into the hospital for what was supposed to be a routine surgery for a hernia. But sadly, due to complications during that surgery, his dad would die that day. Now, by all accounts, this totally devastated Aaron in particular. Despite his dad's harsh treatment, Aaron idolized him, and he would never really get over his father's death. Now, his father was also the authority figure in the Hernandez household, and he would keep Aaron accountable. So this lack of an authority figure, his dad passes away and there's no one there really to keep Aaron accountable, that would spell trouble for him going forward. Now, it was not long after his father's death when his immediate family was really hit hard after it came out that Aaron's mother was having an affair with his older cousin Tanya Singleton's husband, Jeff, and that infuriated Aaron, and he instantly had hate for his mom over this affair. To complicate things, this guy moves into the family home that Aaron lived in. Imagine that. You're in high school, shortly after your dad passes away, who you were enamored by. This guy moves in and he's cooking eggs every morning in your kitchen. Well, it was not long after that Aaron had had enough, and he moves in with his older cousin, Tanya Singleton, who he really looked at like a second mom. And Tanya Singleton, of course, her husband was having an affair with his mother. So he moves in with Tanya, and at school, he continued to thrive athletically. In addition to football, Aaron Hernandez was also an amazing basketball player. He was a track star, and he was also extremely popular, as you might imagine. Good-looking kid, 6'2", 225 pounds. And it was in high school that he would start dating Shayanna Jenkins, who he had known since elementary school. Now, even at 16, Aaron had already had his vices, including smoking weed before school, during school, after school, at practice, games. He was a weed chain smoker. Now, Aaron was also known to drink excessively at this time in his life. He would drink at parties. He would become very aggressive, but he was so gifted athletically that as a senior, he becomes Connecticut's Gatorade Player of the Year, even with all these vices already developing in his life. And in addition to that, he was named a first-team All-American in high school, making him one of the top football players in the country. Now, remember that I told you earlier, Aaron had committed at just 14 years old to play football for UConn. Well, as a senior, he wanted to at least get a taste of the college football recruiting experience, and this led him to visit the University of Florida. So he only did this because he thought it would be fun. He didn't really think he was going to commit to the University of Florida. His brother DJ was still playing. He was in fact a starter at UConn. But while he was visiting Florida, he got an idea of what it was like to play SEC-style football. And shockingly to everyone, he decommits from UConn and he commits to the Florida Gators. To add to that, Urban Meyer, who was the head coach of the Gators during this time, he actually flies to Connecticut and he somehow convinces the principal of Aaron's high school to allow him to graduate a semester early. Now, physically, Aaron Hernandez could handle that. He was a big boy by this time. But maturity-wise and mentally, no way was he ready for that. To be away from home like that, have no one looking over him outside of the coaching staff at Florida. And this would be start of a big spiral for Aaron. Now, on the field in college, he was known as a hard worker. He was very focused, but off the field, totally different story with this guy. In his freshman year of college, 2 men are actually shot in Gainesville, Florida, and 4 Florida Gators are questioned, including Aaron Hernandez. So as the story goes, the 2 men and a friend of theirs had left a bar and they were in their car. They were stopped at a red light and shots ring out. Hernandez at this time was 17. Apparently, he and some of the other Florida Gators had an altercation with these guys at the bar they were at, and some eyewitnesses described Hernandez to a T as being involved in that shooting, but nothing ever came of it. And there were several other incidents in college that were troubling. His sophomore year, he was actually suspended for failing a drug test, but you can't hide talent. And Aaron was a beast on the football field. So good, in fact, that his junior year, he became a first-team college All-American. And he wins what's known as the John Mackey Award for being the best tight end in college football, period. So he forgoes his senior season and he enters the NFL draft. And although he should have went in the first round, his off-the-field bullshit caused him to slip into the 4th round. where he's drafted by Tom Brady's New England Patriots. He was signed to a $2 million contract, and that was in 2010. Now, in July of 2012, 2 men are killed in a drive-by shooting in Boston. Why am I bringing this up? Well, keep that in your back pocket for now, and I'm going to circle back to it a little later on today. So by August of 2012, Hernandez was a bona fide star for the Patriots, and he signs a contract extension for $41 million, which at that time was the second most for a tight end. Then, in February 2013, a man by the name of Alexander Bradley, he's found shot in Riviera Beach, Florida, and that is around the Miami Beach area. And this is just hours after spending an evening with Hernandez at a Miami strip club. And that's another one I want you to keep in your pocket for now, and I'll get back to it. Time moves on. Then, on June 17th of 2013, a high school junior, in a hurry to get home from the gym, he decides to cut through a gravel pit, and he makes what I can only imagine to be a horrific discovery. He sees a bullet-riddled body lying in that pit. He calls police, and investigators arrive on the scene, and they identify that deceased body as that of Odin Lloyd. Now, Lloyd had been shot 6 times. So police, they start investigating. And first, they needed to find out who the heck Odin Lloyd was. They discovered that he was 27 years old. He was a linebacker for a semi-pro football team in the Boston area, and he was thought of very highly in his community. He had a lot of friends. He had family who loved him deeply. He had a steady girlfriend. So they work the crime scene. They really get a mountain of evidence that they end up sending off to the Boston Crime Lab. They're going to get that tested. That will come into play later on because there's a lot of evidence there. And they also find keys inside the pocket of Odin Lloyd, but no car was at the scene. And these keys were from a rental company. So they have that lead, and they're going to chase down that lead. But in the meantime, they start interviewing the family of Odin Lloyd, and they discover that Lloyd's girlfriend and the girlfriend of Aaron Hernandez are sisters. They also discover those keys they found in Odin's pocket were to a car that was rented by Aaron Hernandez. There was also what I consider a big early key to this case. A giant piece of evidence surfaced when police theorized Odin Lloyd knew something bad was going to happen that night, and he texted his sister, "Did you see who I'm with?" And when she responded, "Who?" he replied, "NFL. Just so you know." Police know they need to talk to Aaron Hernandez, so they drive to that home, and they're sitting out front of that home. They're trying to secure a search warrant, and they want to talk to him. They've got a lot of evidence already on this guy. But more than anything else, they wanted to make sure he didn't just disappear.
Jim, did you see what happened in Texas today?
Wait, before you tell me that, let me tell you what happened in New York.
It cannot be as crazy as the case I told you about yesterday in Louisiana.
You know what? We should do a podcast about it.
And with that, we did. Crime Wire Weekly covers the crime news headlines that have dominated the week.
We cover trending crimes from all over the country and even sprinkle in a few globally.
Crime Wire Weekly is available now wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Simply by searching Crime Wire Weekly or clicking the link in the description of this podcast. In the meantime, other detectives, they searched the cell phone of Odin Lloyd, and they discovered the night he died, Aaron and Odin had communicated late that night. So Aaron, he notices on his security cameras cops outside his house, and they were in an unmarked car, but Aaron knew they were cops. So he calls his agent, who is also his attorney, and he says, "Hey, Murph, there's cops outside my house. What should I do?" And Murph is like, "Well, have you done anything wrong?" And Aaron's like, "No." And Murph said, "Well, go out there and ask them why they're sitting out in your front yard." So he does. And two detectives, they see Aaron Hernandez coming out, and they get out and they kind of meet him halfway. They identify themselves to Aaron, and one detective asked him, "Did you rent a black Suburban?" To which Hernandez says, "Yes, I rented it for my friend O." The detective said, "Who's O?" And Aaron says, "Odin." The detective then says, "How do you know Odin?" And this kind of goes back and forth between the detective and Aaron's starting to get frustrated with all these questions. He answered that one. He said, "Odin's girlfriend is my girlfriend's sister. That's how we know each other." He then cuts off the conversation completely, and he says, "Look, I'm going to check with my attorney. Y'all are asking too many questions." And he walks away. Aaron goes back in his house, and the detectives are following close behind. He goes inside, shuts the door, and locks it. They stand there for a minute or so. He opens the door back up, and he hands the detectives a business card for his lawyer. And the detectives, they kind of hurriedly say, "We're investigating a death." And at that point, Aaron just shuts the door, doesn't say a word, and locks it again. Now, to me, that's the biggest red flag of all. What innocent person do y'all know that would not, at the very least, upon hearing that, say, "Who died?" And I believe it was a test by the detectives, and I believe that Aaron Hernandez failed that test with flying colors. So the officers head back to their car, and they make a call to an assistant DA in the area, and they inform him of Aaron's representation, if you will. They read him off the business card, and at that point, he tells the officers, "Just sit tight," because he knew Aaron's lawyer. They actually knew each other very well, had known each other for years. And the assistant DA calls Aaron's lawyer, and he lets him know, hey, the police, they need to talk to Aaron. And the lawyer, in turn, calls Aaron. And I don't know what was said during that conversation, but a few minutes later, Aaron emerges from the house. He has his girlfriend and his child in tow. And he tells the officers he'll follow them to the station to talk. So his girlfriend is driving. She pulls up to the front of the station. She lets Aaron out because his intention is he's going to wait for his lawyers to get there, and she's going to go ahead and drive back home. But as she's leaving, the two detectives that met him at his house pull her over, and they start asking her questions in the parking lot. They proceeded to ask her if she knew who Odin Lloyd was, and she said, well, I don't know him that well. He dates my sister. They asked her the last time she saw Odin, and she answered it was this past Saturday morning. She gave the officers at that point Aaron's cell number because they asked for it. And then the officers asked, well, when was Aaron home and when was he not home this past weekend? She said he was home all day Sunday, but was gone when she went to bed that night. And that was the night that Odin Lloyd died. And it was about this time that Aaron must have seen her from inside the police station because he called her on her cell and he said, hey, look, Murph, which is his lawyer, said did not talk to detectives about anything. She relays that message and they let her go. So inside the station, Hernandez's lawyers arrive and he confers with them back and forth, but he goes outside to do that. As a matter of fact, he walks to their car, gets in the car with the attorneys, and they're conferring. And police are watching this. They're located on an upper level floor in this police station, and they can actually see Aaron inside of the car. And they see him pull out his cell phone and remove his battery, which Aaron was known at this time for being paranoid that people listened to his conversations through his iPhone. He would tell a lot of his friends that. So Aaron and his attorneys, they get done conferring, they get out of the car, they go back into the police station, and his attorneys, while Aaron is standing there, says he's decided that he doesn't want to interview at this time. So police say, okay, well, can we see his cell phone and make a copy of it, and then we'll give it back to him? And the attorneys basically said, not without a warrant. That was it. They turn around and they leave and they bring Aaron back to his house. Now, word had gotten around quickly in Boston by this time. Everybody knew Aaron Hernandez in Boston, very popular New England Patriot. And in no time flat, the Patriots even heard and I'm talking the upper level, I'm talking the owner of the Patriots, had heard, and they promptly bar him from the stadium until he is cleared of any wrongdoing in this case. Now, the same day that police attempted to question Hernandez, they were also able to secure a search warrant for his house, and they searched it for nearly 4 hours. They also asked for his cell phone again, which this time it was given to them in pieces from one of his attorneys. He smashed it. They get a hold to a security video from his residence, and they discover Aaron had tried to destroy the entire video, but he screwed up and he didn't delete a big part of it. We're going to get to that a little later because it had some really damning footage on it, including Aaron walking around the house with a gun. So they gather all this evidence, and on June 26th of 2013, Aaron is arrested at his home and he's charged with the murder of Odin Lloyd. In that very same day, the New England Patriots release him from his contract. Aaron was charged with first-degree murder, and he was also charged with some weapons offenses, a total of 5 in all. And he was placed in suicide watch when he got to the jail. Now, that's standard for high-profile inmates for several reasons. First, you don't want other inmates trying to make a name for themselves by attacking a high-profile inmate before a trial. And second, guys like Aaron Hernandez, literal millionaires, they're not used to confinement and being told when to eat and shower and all these sort of things. And these inmates, if they're going to kill themselves, it's going to be early on. So while Aaron was being booked and introduced to his new home, something else hit the news that was even more shocking. Aaron Hernandez was a suspect in a double murder in Boston a year prior to his arrest. On July 16th of 2012, 3 friends went out for a night on the town. At the end of the night, 2 of those friends were dead. A guy by the name of George Abro and a guy by the name of Safirio Furtado were found shot and killed at a red light in Boston after leaving a bar. They were 28 years old. A third man was also shot, but he survived that drive-by shooting. Now, not only did police suspect Aaron Hernandez was the one who killed him, they had a witness that was willing to testify to it. So we're going to fast forward a little bit, and I'm going to give you a bit of a timeline up to the trial. On June 28th of 2013, police recover a silver Chrysler they believe Aaron and 2 other men were in the night of the shooting. Who were those 2 other men? A guy by the name of Carlos Ortiz and another guy by the name of Ernest Wallace. Now, these 2 guys were bad news and not the type of people that Hernandez would typically hang out with. Basically, a couple of wannabe thugs. So I mentioned the car, and it was interesting not only how they found it, but where they found it. So the house side of that is they had plenty of video with these 2 guys and Aaron together with Odin Lloyd, and I'm talking surveillance video from street cameras, etc., the night he was murdered. They were riding around in the exact car. They even had video of Hernandez stopping and getting gas with all 3 of them. Hernandez actually went inside of a store and he bought some blue Bubblicious gum that would play a big role in this case later on. But the where, as it relates to this car they found, is even more intriguing. Remember Aaron's older cousin, Tanya Singleton, who he looked at like a mother. They found out Tanya was the person he trusted most in the world. They secured a search warrant to search her home, knowing some sort of evidence may be there. And sure enough, in the garage, covered with a tarp, was a Nissan Altima. And not just that, 5 .45 caliber shell casings fired from the same gun that killed Odin Lloyd were found. Fingerprints of both Hernandez and Odin Lloyd were found on that car, as well. And it's important to note that Tanya, at this point, she had stage 4 cancer. So on July 9th of 2013, police released text messages between Lloyd and Hernandez on the night of the murder, in which Hernandez texted Lloyd, quote, "Do you want to meet up? I want to step out for a little." Odin texted, quote, "We still on?" Which that text was sent at 12:30 in the morning on the night Odin died. On July 30th of 2013, police divers, they search a lake in Bristol, Connecticut after they got an anonymous tip and they're looking for that murder weapon, but nothing turned up in that lake. However, the next month, police in Springfield, Massachusetts, they find a weapon, which just so happens to be the gun used in the 2012 double murder in Boston. Then, in September of 2013, Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz, they are indicted in the murder of Odin Lloyd. They have gathered enough evidence to tie 3 of them to this. But it's shortly after that Hernandez is fighting a lawsuit against another shooting victim. Now, this victim alleged he was shot in the face, and that guy's name is Alexander Bradley. So let's talk about this guy, Alexander Bradley, because he tells a wild story about his relationship with Aaron Hernandez. So they were friends, and Alexander Bradley, not the type of guy to be played with, kind of a gangster. Now, Bradley contends that he and Aaron go out one night, this is in February of 2013, to a strip club in Miami called Tootsie's Cabaret. They leave the club early that morning, and they were having conversation about an incident that I touched on earlier. And I'll give you the details later, but let's just say for now that it involved that double shooting I've already mentioned. So it's during the conversation that Hernandez gets more and more pissed off at Bradley. Hernandez pulls out a gun, shoots Bradley in the face, and leaves him for dead in the wee hours of the morning in an industrial park. What Aaron didn't know is that another car was in that industrial park at the time, and the occupant of that car drives to where he hears a gunshot. And he sees a body laying in the road. He calls an ambulance, and he literally saves the life of Bradley, who was severely injured, gunshot to the face, right? Police show up at the scene. Detectives go to the hospital to interview Bradley, but he ain't talking. I mean, he's a street guy, right? And he wants to handle this himself. So he ends up from this shooting being blind in one eye. Now, what's crazy is Aaron, after he shot Bradley, later on, come to find out, he actually called Bradley's girlfriend and he asked if she had heard from Bradley. He acted like he and Bradley never showed up at that club. The problem was plenty of surveillance footage of this from street cameras, etc. At that point, he did not realize that Bradley had survived. And it would not be long before he would realize that Alexander Bradley did indeed survive when Bradley himself, as soon as he was able to, calls Aaron Hernandez. Aaron picks up the phone and Bradley says, "What up?" And Aaron's response to that was, "Who is this?" Which he knew exactly who it was. But long story short on that, Alexander Bradley files a civil suit regarding Hernandez shooting him. So all this becomes public. So what was that shooting all about? Well, they get into an argument because Alexander Bradley told him, quote, "You need to settle down before you pull some stupid shit like those 2 guys you killed in Boston." That's right, folks. Not only did Alexander Bradley know about Hernandez being responsible for that double murder in Boston in 2012, he witnessed it. So let's get into the details. On July 16th of 2012, Daniel Abreu and Safiria Furtado, they go to a club, and according to Bradley, it was the same club in Boston that he and Aaron went out to. Now, everyone's having a good time that night until, completely on accident, In this jam-packed club, one of the men accidentally spills his drink and just a little bit of it splashes onto Aaron Hernandez. But this dude's got a short temper. He gets pissed off pretty quick. So Bradley said at that point forward, Hernandez whole demeanor changed. It was like he went from happy to pissed off in 2 seconds flat, like most psychopaths would do, right? Well, just as they are pulling out of the club because he decides, hey, man, we need to get out of here, Hernandez spots the guy in a vehicle that drives right past him and Alexander. And he tells Alexander, hey, follow that vehicle. They follow these people. They pull up side by side at a red light. And according to Bradley, before he knew anything was happening, Hernandez pulls out a gun and just starts firing into that other vehicle. And he killed the 2 occupants in the car, injured a third, and I believe there was a fourth in the car that was not injured. And he and Alexander sped away. Right before the trial is starting for the Odin Lloyd case, he gets indicted for that double murder. But that trial for that double murder would have to wait. So Aaron, at this point, he's in jail. He's awaiting trial for the Odin Lloyd murder. And word gets out that he is not playing well with other inmates. On February 25th of 2014, as he was out of his cell, another inmate who was also out totally by mistake, he sees Aaron, and in an attempt to make a name for himself, they throw down. But by most accounts, Aaron gets the best of him in this altercation. Also around that time, it comes out that Aaron also threatened to beat the shit out of a jail worker. So jail by this time is getting to him. Then, finally, on June 29th of 2015, the trial in the murder of Odin Lloyd starts. And I'm going to pick up in the next episode with the details of that trial. But I bet you thought when I started this one, I wasn't going to tell you this guy was just about a legit serial killer. Aaron Hernandez. Just a really sad story as we get deeper into it. Thank you so much for listening today. Check out the Patreon. We got commercial-free early releases. I know those commercials can get aggravating for people sometimes, so we do offer that option. Patreon.com/exposed podcast files. We also do bonus episodes on there. We do quarterly merch, all kinds of different things. Check it out. Also, check out Crime Wire Weekly. I do that with award-winning host, Unspeakable's own Kelly Jennings. She is the queen of true crime, in my opinion, and we talk about true crime headlines from throughout the week. We drop this every Friday. Just kind of give you a crime news synopsis, if you will, of the trending news. So check that out as well. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.